Daisy and the Trouble with Coconuts. Chapter 1. The trouble with coconuts is are they the worst type of nuts in the whole wide world. And if I was a monkey living in a jungle that would be totally made of coconut trees, and one was coconut, one of the trees asked me to be their friend, then there is absolutely no way that I said yes. I'd rather be friends with Jack Beeswhistle, who's the worst boy on earth, than be friends with a coconut. If you ask me, coconuts shouldn't be allowed in a funfair. If you double ask me, they shouldn't be allowed to grow. Coconuts are too big. Coconuts are too hairy. Plus, if you try to win one, they just get you into trouble, which isn't my fault. Chapter 2. I was really excited when I heard the Funfair was coming into town. Gabby was the first person in school to tell me. Natasha Bragg was second. Daniel Nixon was in third. Fiona Tucker was in fourth, I think, or it might have been Coralie Carroll. I'm not sure, so I'll call it draw. Everyone was in the playground for really excited about the funfair. The trouble is, everyone was still ready to excited we went into class too. Being excited at funfair in class was against the school rule, because if you made forget the times to the table and you fidget, the trouble with fitting if your chair squeaks. The trouble with your chair squeaking is making the teacher look right at you, which is a big problem with you. Just say 6, 7, or 97. If you just told the teacher has 6 sevens or 93, you want to have add summer as a new sum. The trouble is when Mr. Peters heard the chair squeaks again, she asked me 2 sums in a row, which is probably against the law, but there was no one around to stop her. The trouble with 9 times 8 is an even harder sum than due to 6 times 7, especially as there's no funfair coming to town. If there's a funfair coming to town, then all sums are really easy, hard sums because your brains can't thinking about more important things like funfair. The trouble with thinking about the funfair during the mental arithmetic is 9 sounds but a bit 5 and 8 gets muddled down with worse, which is why I said the answer is 9 times 8 was 20. Which isn't the right answer either. When Mrs. Peters said it wasn't even close, everyone in my class started looking at me, which made me go hot. The trouble is, when you go hot in class, it makes your brain shrink, which means it's even harder to the sum in your head. Lucky for me, Mrs. Beechwitz fell off his chair just before I was going to change my mind to 76. Which wasn't a good job really, because 76 wasn't the right answer either. Thank goodness Jack did fall off his chair because everyone was looking at him now. Instead of me, including Mr. Peters. Except no one could really see him because he hadn't got up from the floor. Fiona Tucker looked down at her feet and told us that Jack was dead on the floor, and Mrs. Peach forgot about 9 times 8 together. She ran to the back of the class and Fiona Jake still in. See, it was true, but it wasn't. Jack Beechwhistle was even slightly dead. He was just pretending. That is the trouble with Jack Beechwhistle. He's so badly behaved. The trouble is pretending you're dead in class. Mrs. Peter doesn't think it's a very funny thing to do. I think it's a very funny thing to do. Everyone in the class thought it was funny, but Mrs. Peter is the teacher, which means she had never funny bones and taken her place in the crossbones. Her crossbones are even closer, and she noticed that Jack has been drawing funfair pictures all over his math book. Then she got even closer and closer when she noticed Fiona Tucker had been drawing funfair pictures too. It wasn't just Jack and Fiona either. The big weir and in the back of her hands. Harry Bissell has a candy floss tattoo in his arms, and David Angster had drawn a riffle of and rings with exploding duck right across the top of his school bag. No wonder no one could get their sums right. Lucky I've never been a funfair because so I don't know what kind of picture to draw, but I still had the total for squeaking. Mrs. Peter told us fidgeting and drawing and Funfair pictures, not so. Arithmetic was completely unacceptable behavior. She said that the priest X had spent his time fidgeting and drawing candy floss on his arms. Then mathematics would be still in dark ages. She said this from now we must start considering important things on the life. Then she said we have to say in the break time to catch up with ourselves. But we have to ban them from thinking about foreign affairs all the day. But I still did, in only a secret and without fidgeting. Chapter 3. The trouble with Funfair poster is a Funfair comes to town. It sticks them everywhere. When me and Mom went to town after school, I saw Funfair posters sticking fans by the roundabout. All over, and why do they even stop? There was a Funfair poster stuck in the window in the empty shop in the high street. There was even a bit of Funfair poster stuck in the back of the lorry parked outside Baker's. It sounds so exciting. I even get more excited when Mom told me the nanny and Grampy was funny while at school and offered me to take to the Funfair at Saturday afternoon. Whenever the Funfair was time to time before, my mom always put up a grumpy face. As far as she's concerned, the Funfair is a completely waste of money. Plus, she says the game and the Funfair are too expensive and the rice spins around you so much you may be sick. Sometimes I think my mom should be a teacher. Lucky for me, Mom wasn't invited. Reckon Nanny and Grumpy was probably taking Mom to a Funfair when she was a little girl, but she had decided to never do it again. Funfairs are no fun if you take a wrong sort of your children. Lucky for Nanny and Grumpy, I was exactly the right sort of children to take a Funfair. I didn't mind if the rides were too expensive because Nanny and Grumpy wasn't even fainting. I didn't mind if the rides made me sick because at least I would be having really fun at the same time. Plus, I absolutely sure I wasn't going to be sick anymore. When I spoke to Grumpy on the phone on Friday, he sounded even more excited about the Funfair than me. He asked me if I'd been a bumper car, and I said I hadn't. He asked me if I'd been a house was scared about, I hadn't. He asked me if I have a wardrobe, and I haven't. He asked me if I'd eaten a toffee apple, but I hadn't. Only said, I said because I was getting a bit of embarrassing. And anyway, I had eaten an apple before, and I had eaten a toffee before. Only not at the same time, which is almost like the same thing, kind of. Anyway, Grampy said there's the two things for us absolutely do. Number 1, we must win a goldfish. Number 2, we must win a coconut. I've never won a goldfish or coconut before. You can imagine how excited I am now, which you're getting good mental arithmetic adds up to. 4 fabulous Funfair hours. Chapter 4. To have fun for a break, all you need is 2 whisk box and some honey nut loops. Oh, and a biggish carton milk and a lot of scuttled around the milk. First of all, take the first whisk and lay it flat on the bottom of the bowl. Then widget the second whisk was against the slide. The first widget helps the second widget to stay in position. Next, cover with whisk stuck with milk. Not too much, just enough to make the milk look like a swamp. Then take a honey nut loop on your finger, place it on the top of the slide, count down to 3, and let the honey nut drop and roll down into the swamp. As soon as the loop touches the ball, you can grab it with a finger and eat it. How much fun is that? The more honey nut loop you roll down the slide, the more you can eat it. It's simple. Plus, once you run out of honey nut loops, you can still eat slide its crunchy and mushy bottoms and swamp afterwards. So I said I probably won't. Chapter 5. Mom said I look a bit clashy, but I didn't care. I think orange, purple, and green got really well today. After I dressed, I went into the lounge to practice my screaming. Gabby had told me the sound after school was fun for us. You can't stop screaming with your mom when you got. The trouble I'm practicing swimming was I'm too good at it. Mom said I practiced swimming, I should go down outside in the garden. What about 5 screams after Mrs. Peck told me that I should practice and shut. The door shut. So I did, except Tiptoe was asleep in the wheelbarrow. The trouble with screaming was when Tiptoe is asleep in the wheelbarrow, it doesn't just wake him up, it made him totally go loopy. I mean, 1 minute he was curled up in the wheelbarrow, the next minute he was halfway up the hall, and the other minute they almost across the ceiling. I wouldn't have screamed if you noticed it, but it was so dark in the shed that no way I could see a cat curled up in the shadow. The trouble with cats. If they're more flossal pajamas when they go to sleep, they're much easier to see. By the time I opened to shut up the door and let tiptoe out, I knocked over the flower pots, rakes, and water cans, spreads, forks, plus all other tops. Paddles were high up shelf. I guess who had picked up them all? It wasn't Tiptoes. It's me. If you ask me, a cat wants to curl up and go to sleep in the wheelbarrow. She got her own shed to sleep, and he needs a whole new wheelbarrow. Or at least it would glow in the dark pajamas, or lunch snore loudly. It was only when I was stretching high and picked up the seat bag and I suddenly forgot to do everything. Because my really high up stretching and stretching suddenly reminded me of something really important. That Dylan told me at school. If you're going to a fun fair, you need to wear your highest shoes. Chapter 6. Dylan was the coolest boy I knew. He's 2 years older than me, which means he's really experiments. Plus, he's lived in 2 doors away from me in a house with 3-time doorbells. Plus, he lives in 2 doors away from me in a house with a 3-time doorbell. And if he got a pet snake, him called a shooter. How cool is that? At first, when Dylan told me that I need to wear my highest shoes on a Funfair to Saturday, I thought he was joking. Dylan was too far with jokes. Sometimes Dylan is too cool to even smile. According to Dylan, some of the rides at Funfair were so dangerous and so death-dying, you have to be 140 centimeters to go on. The trouble is, I'm only 134 centimeters tall. The trouble is beginning to 134 centimeters tall. Is that you? To go on a slide, you need to find an extra 6 centimeters from as nowhere. The trouble is, I really didn't know where to look for. When I asked my mom on a Saturday morning I need to eat when I rose 6 centimeters in 2 hours, she wasn't very helpful at all. You try eating some giraffe burgers, she laughed. The trouble with putting on your mom's high heel is she sees you slinging the thing straight off you. The trouble when you're wearing 2 pairs of shoes at once is first pair kept taking it off. The trouble with the sellotape books from the bottom of your shoes, the sellotape sticks are about to stick stuff, plus the book belongs to your mom, she got a little cross. Especially when she read them yet. Which means you still need to find another 6 centimeters from somewhere. In the end, my mom convinced me didn't have to find 6 centimeters from anywhere. She said I was going to theme park where their rides are massive, and I'm going to travel at Funfair where rides will be much smaller and not death diving at all. Which was a bit disappointing, really. I really wanted to ride to Funfair as death-defying as possible. Chapter 7. When Nanny and Grampy arrived outside in a car, I really screamed with eyes so excited. Are you ready for the goldfish, Daisy? Shouted Grampy when he opened the car door. Sure I am, I sneezed back. Are you ready to win a coconut? He shouted as he opened the garden gate to Nanny. You bet, I shouted back, and I have. We have run straight out of the front door, raced down the garden and path and jumped straight in the car. The sunroof is so exciting. The trouble is Mom made me put on sunscreen first. The trouble of putting sunscreen, it takes ages, especially when you're hot day, because more of your burny bits were on the show, which meant Nanny and Grampy had to come into the house and wait for me. Which meant Mom has to change. I'll talk to them. We're really boring, so don't let Daisy get overexcited. Don't let Daisy go on a ride when made her sick. Honestly, sometimes I wonder if my mom over an actual child herself. And if she was, I bet she never got sunburned. Mom put me so much sunscreen on, it had 20 past 12 before Ava left the house. That's the trouble with sunscreen for children. Children don't want to put it on the first place, plus you made it too. It made it white and smellery. The trouble with short-sleeved t-shirts are too short to wipe your face on. The trouble with wiping your face on the arm if your arms are white is smelly too. An extra sticky white extra sunscrub for grown-ups. They look like a polar bear instead. It's where serves them right. Look at Nanny has some tissue in the handbag. Otherwise, I don't know what I have done. Nanny had mint in her bag too. That made me feel better. It really has sucked, especially when you're driving to Funfair. Chapter 8. The trouble with seeing an actual Funfair right in front of you is you don't know where to look first. It is so bright and colorful, noisy and busy. There are all the color lights and loud screaming sounds, and there are big stripy tents held up with thick ropes. Wow! Plus, there is people and children everywhere. I thought it was everyone the whole world could come and see and ride in the Funfair. Except my mom. And guess what? You didn't have to pay to go in. All you have to do is to park out the car in the field, walk across the grass, and straight go inside. I didn't even have to measure to see how high I am. It was so brilliant and so confusing. My left leg wanted to go. My right leg wanted to go right, and my head just wanted to go everywhere. Before I had time to even think about stall, I saw big stripy ropes and a big sign that said Tombola. Tombola is a very exciting Funfair game. You have paid a lady some money and you gotta pick chopped straws out of a bucket sandwich. All the straws had rolled up tackles tickets inside, and one of the raffle tickets had a number and ended with 0. You had a prize. I was really good at pulling the roll-up raffle tickets out of my straw, and even better with uncurl. Trouble is the raffle ticket is picked out of a bucket ending with 3, 6, and 9, which meant I didn't win a prize, but it was okay because there were loads of other stuff swirling around in it. The trouble with a hook-a-duck is you only hook out of you can magnet in the end of the strings. Just stick the magnet on its back. Which I am, so I did in about 7 seconds flat. Then I got to play darts. At first I thought the sharp bits I have much in the position, but I allowed the 7 dots in Funfair. I went up for my first dart. I can see the dartboard, which I mean let it go in the dark and kind of didn't dartboard. It went into Lady's shoulder. Luckily it didn't have potion and it didn't stick so far. Otherwise, she wouldn't have me let it throw it again, but probably still she would give me box to stand on. When you're playing actual darts and you have a box to stand on at the dartboard, what's much easier to see the trouble is because it didn't make easier hit. The trouble is the fat darts were red yellow bits when you draw, they didn't go up straight. Plus they even hit the dartboard, they won't stick in. When I asked me how should I let it go, Nanny and Grampy said we should move on. So did the lady. But even he hadn't shown I was scared because now I was standing on the wheel with my very own bumper car. And I squeezed my finger on the bumper car and steered to the wheel and racing car tingled back away from the body. Whoa. When Grampy fastened my seatbelt, I thought I was Grand Prixel driving to Telly. The trouble is waving to Nanny. If you're driving a bumper car at the same time, you might miss someone and he's crashing into. Luckily, Grampy grabbed the steering wheel and made sure bumped straight into the car number 22, and the car number 7, car number 12, and car number 9. Grampy said we should try and crush evil single par before the tutor went. the back of the car and told us they wasn't allowed to balk. Grumpy said it was health and meant mood until I hit my chin on the steering wheel. The trouble is, with being a car accident, it made you feel fizzy drink. Slushy pearls. The trouble with Funfair onions, it took a bit of burn and it's so squishy. Plus, if you don't have any, it leaves much more room for tomato sauce. Because I guess who I saw next? Candy floss. The tiny nibbles when she sucked and the touch it made tongue, it melted away. After about 20 bites, Nanny showed me how to pull the bites away from a finger. If you pull candy floss with your finger, it doesn't melt. Anyway, you just put it onto your mouth. Nanny showed me how to use my candy floss. Just pretend I have a mustache like Grampy's. And Father Christmas, the trouble is I didn't have a candy floss about it. The trouble with the watcher and everyone else go on there. And 5 minutes later, I really was going to do it all. Grampy said the squee was giving with supplies and hot dogs and butter and tomato sauce and candy floss to change to go down. But if you also give me a chance to say hello to Sanji Lepcha. At first, I didn't even realize this Sanji and her mother walked into the squee behind us. I was too busy watching the watcher, trying to work out the carriage would be faster than us to get in. Sanji asked me to see any friends from school. He said loads of people from school were at the Funfair too. He asked them Lyman Cuttercoat, Livery Powers, Barry Model, and Vicky Carol, Paula Potts, and even Mrs. Peters. Can you believe it? Mrs. Peters! Even though she will like the Funfair too. Sanji told me that so far he got married around an octopus. Plus, he went to one Teddy at the Call of Destinies. When he asked me the Call of Destiny was, he said it was a really exciting game. In the glass box, you have to try it and pick him up a teddy bear ceiling and drop down in a shiny metal claw. If I ask him to make it scream, he may scream his ear full up. Because Sanji's dad did a wheel turning his head. It was a Wild West game called Running and Shooting. I really love to play this game. Dolly mixture. The trouble with Dolly mixture is a lot smaller than Indian bubble. Grandpa said to make them pretend it was a Jessie Jane, but I didn't pop stars and think about Dolly mixture. Guess what? I hit the Dolly mixture. I actually knocked the box out of the Dolly mixture right over with Eller cork, which means the man in the cowboy hat told me I hadn't won a prize, which wasn't okay, because I started to get a little bit cross. Chapter 13. The trouble with getting a little bit across the Funfair is making it really loud, lolly colors words on it, which is lucky because every guess I saw we left with a really shooting strawberry stall. Another stall that looks a big lolly and it swears on them. The trouble with Mom is going to be prison for a golden nectar with many from a tea. The trouble is actually popcorns are 2 different flavors, normal and toffee. The trouble with no more and toffee, I like them both the same. I know because I went to the top of the stairs, the health skater's man, which we back down, because a bit of tricky with a load of children coming in the other way. So, but it doesn't matter what you do, you used to. Health skaters are one of the highest things in the Funfair. Before you go down the hair slider, you have to put the legs in the bottom of the sack. Then the health skater man gives you a push and up you go. I've never been a slide so easy and health skater slide before. And a hula. If you weigh hula, it's way better than that. Not just any over, exactly over. The trouble is when hula hoops at the side of the box would have squares. It means the hoops wouldn't fit over the box. I asked the hula lady for some square hoops. She said she didn't have any, which meant I couldn't win my first hoop. I couldn't win my second hoop. And I couldn't win my third hoop either, and neither could Nanny and Grampy, which made me really, really cross. It's made to need an ice cream. Especially the trouble with Funfair ice cream on a really hot day, you have to eat them really, really quickly. And guess what? It's coconut shy. The trouble with pointing, it still doesn't know what. Single one of them rolled down and fell into the grass. Nanny said I should go another go, so I did. The trouble was whistling all 5 times and making it start to get cross again. So I blame it, and I did. When you hit on aiming the coconuts and when you're cross and make your eyes really go googly, which you miss even more. The trouble is standing a bit nearer so the coconut shaman is standing too close now, which I wasn't. But he said I was, so I had to step back a bit, which put me off, which meant I missed my 14 ball and my 15. Because he was feeling a bit pulled off, but I didn't because Grampy said he'd win me a coconut instead. Grampy said the second ball had slipped out of his hand and mistake, and the third ball coconut ridden over, but I didn't know who to buy. Nanny actually hit the actual coconut with her first draw. Honestly, she aimed the ball, did a little dance, and wham! She blamed the coconut first time. When Nanny's ball hit the I lifted up in the air and did a little dance because I was actually starting to win a prize. The coconut hit back a good noise with a wooden clunk. It meant the only thing it didn't fall from the stick. Instead of falling off Grumpy and Nanny, she threw the ball harder. But Nanny said if she'd have too much to say too. The trouble with throwing the wooden ball at Coconut Shaman is him. The thing is going on. It would probably be a good idea. Plus, some of they didn't eat an apple core, and it was hopeless. I decided to have vanilla, coconut ice, raspberry ripple, and chocolate and milk. I was going to have rum and raisins too, but I decided not to because the rum and raisins sound if they didn't bear in. Besides, a piece of fudge in my bag as well on the pages to go on well. Then we went to the octopus. And we believe Sanji Lovely was right. The rides on the Funfair was so much fun. Stephanie Braxton house to get dizzy on the board. She had to go and sit inside Jan's ambulance and she felt all right. Then we met Molly's big brother and 2 of his friends. That everyone started to get a bit wrong. The trouble with Jasmine Smart, Natasha Bagwar, Colin Callan, and Natasha, the friends had held on to be Funfair the night before. And they didn't want a coconut either. Natasha had gotten 10 goes and missed every time. Colin and Barry had 20 goes each. Plus, Barry had hit the coconut 2 times in a row, but both times the coconut didn't fall up. And you know what the Barry's big brother friend had told them as well? They told us the coconut Funfair isn't just glue on. There's invisible force field around them too. Only invisible force field in the phrase from never before. Corey Cutter said the knocking of glue of coconut would be a really hard thing to do. And Natasha can knocking out glue on a coconut with a force field around it totally impossible. In fact, it made me get cross and scream to growl at the same time. When I looked down on them, there was a hide together and there we get a piece of paper. Then Colin gave me something even more exciting. It's a tube of super glue. We got the super glue. And we got the poster, whispered Natasha. They told me a plan, a good plan. I'm a coconut, she shouted at the top of her nose, which was a secret sign to Barry. I'm a coconut, he shouted, holding up a poster too, which meant secret sign for Jasmine, and calling at me. By the time the 5 is held up her hand, I'm a coconut, it we right in the big wheels, which meant everyone in the Funfair could see us and hear us. The big wheel went back to the bottom. I waved as hard as could Nanny and Grumpy. I'm coconut, as loud as I could, everyone down below. It was brilliant. The trouble is, getting off wasn't a part of our fun. Staying on was. The big weird man asked me if she could get off his seat. She shook her head and held the poster right over the head. Then she began to sing, We Shall Not Be Moved, which is sings for all of us to sing to. When we all started to sing, We Shall Not Be Moved, Barry and Bro sister and self rolling around the earth laughing. The trouble is telling a big weird man you're glued to yourself on the seat, and first, he didn't believe him. But when you showed him how it was sparkled on the map, they did change his mind. The trouble is calling a fire bridge wasn't take a right wrong of it. Clothes for mental makes. A special big boy talks about coconuts. And because it right with facts, I saw an actual coconut being knocked by an actual stick by an actual wooden ball. The boy who turned the ball turned around. He had a short across his chin. And you know what? It's Jack Beachwheels. All the boys in the Funfair, if he had to be him. It was growling like a grizzly bear and crossing dinosaur at the time I get back into the car, which wasn't my bedtime. Its response that she could take so too. Anyway, with my punishment, I wouldn't give it back without the things from school. And no rice and bagels all. P.S. I bet you're gonna be sick. The end. Thank you for listening.